Hello everyone, this is Dr. Jeffrey Thibert, Assistant Director of National Fellowships in the Center for Undergraduate Scholarly Engagement, or CUSE, at the University of Notre Dame. For the next 20-25 minutes or so, I will be kind of doing a check-in with our summer Fulbright applicants about the study research grants. If you're applying for an English teaching assistantship grant, I did a session like this yesterday, and that can be accessed probably on the same page where you are viewing this video. I should emphasize that this is really designed for people who have been working with CUSE on the fellowships, on the Fulbright rather, process to submit by the campus deadline of August 19, 2014. I'm recording this on August 6, 2014, so it's really designed for people who have been through the process with us so far. This is kind of meant as a check-in before that campus deadline. If you're looking for general information about the Fulbright or a specific advice about the application, we'll talk a little bit about that here, but there are other videos on our site, which is www.youtube.com/user/ND-fellowships. And if you go there, you will see a whole host of videos that might be useful to you. If you are viewing this live, or even if you're watching the video, and you have any questions, feel free to email them to fellows, that's plural, @nd.edu, and someone with your request. So just quickly, I want to kind of talk about what the process is going to look like from here until the final deadline this year. And after that, I'll give some kind of general advice, things you should be thinking about in these final weeks, and things you should kind of double check before you submit for the campus deadline. So I hope this will be useful to you. So the process, as you hopefully know by now, the campus deadline is set for August 19th at noon. And that is a Thursday, so it's it's a Tuesday. It's Tuesday, August 19th at noon. So you will want to have everything ready to go by then in the Embark online application. So that includes all your material, but also any recommendation letters, foreign language evaluations, letters of affiliation should be in by that day and time. Now, in some cases, people do have difficulty getting the letters of affiliation by then. If that is going to have to come in after that deadline, what I suggest doing is, first of all, letting us know, just sending us an email and checking in. Some people have already done that. But also in your proposal, I would indicate that you are still working on the affiliation, or you are in the stages of finalizing the affiliation, something like that, so that the review committee will know why the affiliation letter or letters aren't present in your application. That will help kind of explain to them that it's not that you don't have an affiliation or that you've left this piece out, but that this is something you're still working on. Now, do note that the affiliation letters really have to be in by October 10th at the absolute latest, and that is actually the final deadline. So that's when all revisions would have to be done. Everything would have to be complete, all recommendations by October 10th. That gives us a few days to do what we need to do with the application before the absolute deadline of October 15th, which is the deadline for us to have things ready. Now, after you submit on August 19th, what will happen is that we will download your application from the system, and then once we've confirmed that we have everything, we will release it back to you. We will unsubmit it. So when you do submit, if you haven't done this already as part of our feedback process, when you do submit, you might be, you'll get a message saying this is final, you won't be able to change anything. You can still go ahead and submit. Because we are releasing it back to you, you will in fact be able to make changes. So we will download the application, unsubmit it, and then you will be able to continue working on it. Now, the next thing will be that you will have an interview within the first 3 weeks of September. We have a number of interviews to do, so we spread them out over the 3 weeks. You will be assigned an interview day and time. If you need to miss a class to come to the interview, we will give you a class absence excuse. We've done this in the past and it's worked out, so you would just have to let us know if you needed that. But at these interviews, you will meet with 3 or 4 faculty and staff at Notre Dame who will have read your application in detail and should have some advice for you on how you might strengthen the application between the interview time and that October 10th final deadline. So we call them interviews, and there will be some questions you will likely be asked, questions about what you're planning to do and why you're planning to do it. They may ask questions to clarify things that aren't clear from your proposal, but you should definitely bring something to take notes with, because the bulk of the time will be spent giving you feedback on your application. And this is a great opportunity to get feedback from other people. So you've hopefully been talking to advisors, and hopefully you've gotten some feedback from us here at CUSE, but this will be a good chance to get feedback from a wider range of individuals. After the interviews, as I said, you'll be able to revise your application up through October 10th. Now, one thing to note is that Fulbright will be holding its own official webinars on finalizing and polishing the application on August 14th, September 9th, and October 2nd. And let's go to the Fulbright site really quickly here so you can see where to find information about these. If you go to Fulbright events and you click View All, you will see these webinars listed, finalizing your application, and that's where you can go and register for the webinar, and then you will receive information about how to log in. You might also want to check out under About, Resources and Events, recorded webinars, webinars that they have recorded in the past. So in your case, the Fulbright U.S. Student Program Study Research and Arts webinar might be useful to you. It might be useful to also watch the general introduction. So these can be helpful resources as you're kind of finalizing the application, and I encourage you to take advantage of those if you can. If you can't go to the webinars live, you can watch those archived versions. Now, 2 other points. One is we have added an additional feedback deadline. We've had a couple of those over the summer. The last chance to submit feedback before the campus deadline will be tomorrow, which is Thursday, August 7th at noon. And you can submit that either by submitting through the online application system or just by emailing your drafts directly to me if you're a study research applicant. And in fact, to make it easier, just email them to fellows@nd.edu. That's fellows plural at nd.edu, and then we will be able to access those. So that's one point I wanted to make. Another point I want to make is that you will be able to request feedback one time in between your interview and the final deadline. The deadline for that will most likely be Monday, September 22nd. So that should give you some time after your interview to make revisions. And of course, you might be working on it even between August 19th and then even before the interview. But that will be the last chance to submit a formal draft. You can ask questions, of course, at any time, but your last chance to submit a draft for feedback would be Monday, September 22nd. We would turn around the feedback to you as quickly as we could so that you'd have a little bit of time to make revisions before October 10th. So again, if there's any questions about that, let me know, but hopefully this makes the process clear from here on out. If you haven't registered for the Embark online application yet, please do so right away. That's how we keep track of who's applying, and we may be using that to communicate with you, so it's important that you do that. You should also have registered your recommenders by now. If you haven't done that, go ahead and do that. Don't forget also that there are sample applications that were successful in past years from Notre Dame available on the Box file sharing service. I have sent out an email about that to our applicants with the link to that. If you need that information, feel free to email fellows@nd.edu and I will send it to you. Now, let's talk about a few things you definitely want to make sure that you do before August 19th. And you may have done these already, and even if you have, I encourage you to do them just one more time to really make sure that you are doing everything correctly with the application. The first point I want to make is, I'm going to go back to the Fulbright website for this. Be sure that you reread or read, hopefully not for the first time, but hopefully this is a reread situation. You reread your country information. So if you are proposing to go to France, make sure that you go through and read over the information for the grant that you're applying to. Pay special attention to the grant period. Make sure you note if your country has an kind of unconventional grant period by U.S. standards. They are not all on a U.S. academic year. They are not all for 9 or 10 months. You'll see in France here, they're 6 to 10 months. And in your case, it would probably be either the 10-month degree-seeking grant or the 9-month non-degree-seeking grant. So make sure that you are planning your project so that it fits the timeline of the country. This is a country-specific thing. Similarly, make sure that you are writing your proposal so that it fits the candidate profile. And do whatever you can to connect what you're proposing to do to this profile. And make sure, of course, that you meet it fundamentally. So if they say that they are going to give preference, for instance here, to candidates enrolling in degree-seeking programs, you might want to take that into account. If it says that they're really not accepting applications from people in certain fields, make sure, you've hopefully noted this already, but please do so again. In some cases, they will tell you the kind of person they're looking for, and that's information that you can think about as you're writing your personal statement, which is where you're demonstrating to them who you are, basically, and what you're like. Please note the foreign language requirements. Note any requirements about the affiliation. Some countries, the affiliations have to be at particular kinds of places. The point is, read this very carefully. Don't just skim it, but actually sit down and read it, highlight important things. If you haven't done this already, I think it's important that you do so. You want to make sure you're not missing anything in the country summary. Then the next most important thing to do is to go to Applicants, Application Tips, and Academic. If you are applying for one of the other ones, the Clinton, you wouldn't be applying for Clinton probably, but National Geographic or Arts, you can go there. I'm going to look at the Academic Tips and read over these very carefully, especially the Statement of Grant Purpose tips, because what they are doing here is telling you exactly what they want you to cover in the Statement of Grant Purpose. And what I recommend doing is sitting down with these questions here, and note that there are slightly different questions if you're proposing independent study research or a graduate degree. So those questions will be will only appeal to segments of you, but these questions apply to, or these points apply to everyone. And sit down with these, sit down with your proposal, and make sure that you can find in your Statement of Grant Purpose where you are addressing all of these questions. So for instance, if you're proposing a study research project, make sure it's clear who you plan to work with, what you're proposing to do, what's innovative about this, why is this interesting, what are your goals and what are your methods, why is this significant. Read through the questions, and you should be able to underline in your Statement of Grant Purpose where you are addressing each of these points, because these are the points the reviewers will be looking at. Ultimately, they'll be looking at your answers to these questions to determine whether to move you forward in the competition. So, you know, if you don't give a rough timeline, that's going to be a negative, because, and they include that right here. So for the statement of grant purpose, they are pretty clear about what they want to see, and so make sure that you read over this tips page very carefully if you haven't yet. In fact, the statement of grant purpose, I think, is the most useful part, but all of these points will be useful. Make sure you read the affiliation letter section. Note that they say there they want the affiliation letters to be on official letterhead and signed by the affiliate. You upload the letters, but they want the letters to be on official letterhead. So read over this carefully. And if your statement of grant purpose is not doing some of these things, then you'll want to edit it to make sure that it is. And you may find that it's doing things that they don't ask for. And if so, you can cut those things out. One other thing I want to note is that they do talk about civic engagement here. How will you engage with the host country community? Give specific ideas for civic engagement. And note that this is in the statement of grant purpose. So there should be at least a few sentences or even a paragraph in your statement of grant purpose where you talk about civic engagement specifically. So you might not think of that as part of your project proposal, but it is part of your statement of grant purpose, because part of the goal of the Fulbright is to promote civic engagement. So note that all these questions need to be included in your proposal, and given that they want you to talk about your academic professional development, civic engagement, you probably have something like a page and a half to actually talk about the project, and then probably a half page to talk about civic engagement, your future goals, that kind of thing. Now, the other important part, of course, is the personal statement, and here they do not give you as much guidance, and they do this on purpose because they want this to be more personal. They don't want this to be formulaic. But what they are looking for here is a biographical sketch that connects to the goals of the Fulbright. Remember what Fulbright is looking for. They're looking for people who have a good project, but that's going to come across in your statement of grant purpose. They're also looking for people who are going to be effective representatives of the U.S. abroad, who are going to engage with the people in the host country, who are mature, adaptable, flexible, because you'll be spending a long period of time in another country. So as you're thinking about what to talk about in your personal statement, you might want to think about, have you had Fulbright-like experiences before? If you've studied abroad, that would probably be something that you'd work into the personal statement. Have you done research abroad? If you don't mention it in your statement of grant purpose, mention it here. So you're kind of convincing them here that you are the kind of person they want as a Fulbrighter. You might also think about what you think is most important about you. If the reviewers could know 2 or 3 things about you, what would you want those things to be? And that's the kind of thing that should also appear in a personal statement. But then how can you illustrate those things? So this might be a place where you talk about why you're interested in public health, anthropology, how that interest developed, what your future goals are, how the Fulbright is going to help you achieve those goals. What experiences you've had that have allowed you to participate in civic engagement, that kind of thing. So remember that it's only 1 page to talk about you, which is not much space. So when you're selecting what you want to talk about, and you'll have to leave some things out, of course, because you're more than 1 page, when you're thinking about what to discuss, remember what Fulbright has in mind. If you need a reminder, go to About, read the history, read about the program, read types of grants, read factors in selection, and reacquaint yourself with what Fulbright wants to see. And then think about experiences you've had that connect to that. So explain to them, why are you interested in a certain topic? Why are you interested in a certain country? What kinds of experiences abroad have you had before? If you haven't had experiences abroad, what kind of civic engagement experiences have you had? Try to explain to them why you're applying for this thing, and how this thing is going to contribute to your future goals. But the fundamental question is why. why are you personally applying to do the project that you're proposing in the statement of grant purpose? So the statement of grant purpose is your professional statement. It's kind of like a cover letter. The personal statement is the personal statement. It's a biographical sketch. Don't repeat things in those two documents. If you feel that you address your future goals well enough in the statement of grant purpose, you don't necessarily have to mention them again in the personal statement. You have such a limited space that you want to make sure that you don't use some of that space repeating things you have already said. So now, those are the major tips that I have at this kind of final stage of the process. I think the key is at this point to really, revisit the information Fulbright is giving you. You might revisit the application advice that we have provided to you. That's actually in that box folder as well, but if you need another copy of it, let me know. And just make sure that what you're doing really does line up with what Fulbright is looking for. The stronger of a proposal you turn in on August 19th, the more useful the feedback you get from the committee in September is going to be. If it's a very rough draft that you submit, that's technically okay. You still have a couple months to work on it, but the feedback isn't going to be as useful because they're going to be seeing such an early version of what you have in mind. So the interviews are not really a chance to work out your project. They're really seen more as a chance to refine it, to clarify some things, to talk about some kind of tweaking you can do that will strengthen it. So be sure to, you might even come to the interview with questions prepared, things that you want to ask the committee so that you're going to get something useful out of that experience. So if you have any questions, of course, you can email fellows@nd.edu and we will get back to you as soon as we can. Keep in mind the final feedback deadline for the campus deadline is tomorrow, Thursday, August 7th at noon. The campus deadline is August 19th. The campus interviews will be the first 3 weeks in September, and you will be assigned an interview time in between August 19th and the beginning of September. You'll get an email about that. We can give you a class excuse if necessary. There will be a final feedback deadline on Monday, September 22nd. And then the final Fulbright deadline is October 10th. And that's when absolutely everything has to be in. There will be no extension beyond that date. So again, if you have any questions, let us know. We're here to support you in any way we can as you're in these final stages. I do encourage you to go back and read through those application tips. I think anything that's important about the statement of grant purpose you will see there. But my final point will be, remember the words compelling and feasible. And what the application is about is showing that you have a project that is compelling, meaning that it is something that will benefit the field of study, it will benefit you personally, and it will benefit the host country. That's what compelling really means in this case. And that the project is feasible, meaning that it can be carried out in the amount of time of the grant period so that it's a reasonable, realistic project, and that it's feasible for you to carry it out. If you're proposing a large-scale interview study and large-scale interview analysis, and you've never done anything like that before, that's going to be a strike against the feasibility of the project. So you're convincing them that the thing is compelling and that it's feasible. Not only that it's a realistic project, but that it's realistic that you can carry it out. And the third thing you're trying to show them is that you are a good fit for the mission of the Fulbright. And that largely happens in the personal statement, that you know that the Fulbright is about civic engagement, that it's fundamentally about promoting positive relationships between the U.S. and other countries through educational exchange. So show them that your project is compelling and feasible, and show them that you are a good fit for the Fulbright, that you will make an excellent Fulbrighter. If you can do those three things well, then you have the best chance possible of moving on in the Fulbright competition. And if you have any questions about how to do that, you'll of course learn more in the interview, but you can always ask us questions about that. So take care, and I look forward to working with you more on the Fulbright.